Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join the hangout. Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join the hangout. Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Yeah, so I'm going to get started soon. I just want to give people time to join the hangout. I'm probably going to do a couple of hangouts tonight. I'm going to start off by talking about some pop culture type issues, and then I'm going to do a separate hangout that deals with some political issues. So I hope you all can hang in there for both of the hangouts. I want to thank the people who have joined. We got a few people on so far that are watching. You all see the subject. I plan on responding to some comments that I received to my Meek Mill video, my video advocating for that brother to be free. So I hope you all can tune in. I see that Jenny Kiss has joined. Peace to you. Thanks for watching. Please let me know if you can hear me okay. I would appreciate it. I want to know if I'm breaking up, if I'm choppy or anything like that. Peace, Warrior Queen Speaks. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. If you all can let me know in the live chat if you can hear me well, if I'm choppy or not, I would appreciate it. So for those people who just joined, I'm going to do a couple of Google Hangouts tonight. This first one will deal with Meek Mill and his case, and the second one will deal with some politics. So I hope you all can stick around for both Hangouts. I'm going to try to make them as brief as possible. I don't want to drag it on too long. I just want to make some points and hear some feedback from the people. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the first subject for this video, and that's Meek Mill. So I did a video explaining why I support the movement to free Meek Mill. There was a rally in Philadelphia not too long ago in support of this movement to free Meek Mill. You had people like Jay-Z and other prominent rap artists supporting this call to free this brother. Now, I want to explain to you why this case is important. I want to explain what it's all about and just deal with some of the comments that I received to that video. The first thing that I want to point out is that this is not about him being a celebrity. I'm not supporting this movement simply because he's some famous rap artist. That's not what it's about. And most people know that I'm a fan of hip hop. I've been a part of hip hop since its inception. You know, I've witnessed the birth of hip hop, and I've been a fan of hip hop since the beginning. And most of the artists that I listen to are of an older generation. I'm really not a fan of Meek Mill. I don't follow his music. I couldn't even tell you one song that this brother has put out. So it's not about me admiring this guy or, you know, being a fan or a groupie of him. That is not why I'm supporting this movement to free Meek Mill. I'm supporting it because this is a civil rights issue. This is an issue of justice. This is an issue of equality. It's something that is very important, not only to Meek Mill as an individual, but it epitomizes a problem that plagues Black communities, and that's this problem of mass incarceration. And we're going to go into this a little bit more. Also, instead of just it being a larger issue, this issue is also about an injustice that's taking place against his brother. Here you have a judge who is not acting based on reason and logic, is not acting based on what's right or what's just. You have a judge that is simply wrapped up in her emotions. You have a judge that is out of control, out of order, out of line. And I'm going to explain to you why I say that. In this case, you had the prosecution say that they don't recommend that this brother be sentenced to jail time, to prison time. You had the brother's probation officer say that the brother should not be sentenced to jail time. Despite all of that, this judge decided to reject those recommendations and lock this brother up for 2 to 5 years. So that's the one point that needs to be raised. The fact that she overrode, recommendations from the prosecution. I mean, usually the prosecution goes hard in the paint, but even they said no charges should be, no jail time should be served for these violations. And then you have the probation officer. So that's one thing. And then, people will say, well, this brother violated his probation. This brother violated his probation on numerous occasions. This brother got what he deserved. And that brings me to another point before I respond to that whole issue. In my comment section, somebody said, well, you need to watch the Bama show. The Bama show laid out all of these violations that this brother committed of his probation. The Bama show has all the facts and all the details. Perhaps you need to listen to that show so you can understand why this brother is going to jail. Perhaps you should listen to that show so you can gain some kind of insight to this whole case. And I'm not naming the actual name of that show, but people get the point. People know, people that are familiar with Black YouTube, they know who I'm talking about and they know what I'm talking about. I mean, for those people who don't know, I mean, this is the guy that says, news with a common sense approach. That guy, the guy that has a real strong Southern accent and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the fact of the matter is this, all jokes aside, before I do a video, I read several articles about the subject matter. I do my research, I do my homework. I don't just hop on here and just start to spout some opinion without doing the background research, without actually doing my homework. So before I did that video, I was very familiar with all the violations that this brother allegedly committed of his probation. And I want to take time to talk about that. So they're saying that this brother deserves to be locked up for 2 to 5 years for violating his probation. And it's important to understand that these violations are not serious violations. It's not like this brother was some kind of menace to society. It's not like this brother was out there robbing people or sticking people up or shooting people or slinging drugs and all that kind of stuff in violation of his parole or fighting people or anything like that. This brother had some simple, non-violent violations of his parole. For instance, the brother's accused of having concerts outside of Philadelphia without the judge's permission. This brother is accused of testing positive for drugs. This brother is accused of, also he's being, his probation is being violated for simply doing a wheelie on a motorcycle while filming a video, a music video, or whatever. They labeled that as reckless driving. That charge was dismissed. But nonetheless, this judge decided to use that as a basis to lock this brother up for 2 to 5 years. If that makes sense to you, there's something wrong with you. Nobody should be locked up for 2 to 5 years simply for doing a wheelie on a motorcycle, especially when that charge was dismissed. But the judge decided to use that as a basis to lock this brother up for 2 to 5 years. This brother also had another charge for allegedly fighting in an airport or something like that. That charge was dismissed. So those 2 charges that were dismissed shouldn't even be a part of the equation. They shouldn't even be factored in when deciding what kind of sentence this brother should receive. But nonetheless, you had this judge decide to use that as a factor for locking this brother up. Nobody should go to jail for charges that were dismissed. You know, nobody should be locked up for 2 to 5 years for charges that were dismissed. Nobody should be locked up for 2 to 5 years for traveling to put on a concert so that they can support themselves and their family. Nobody should be locked up for 2 to 5 years for doing a wheelie on a motorcycle. I mean, this woman overcharged his brother. This woman was draconian in her sentence. She was harsh and just fundamentally unfair. So when you go to this other issue of drug addiction, you know, this brother Meek Mill acknowledged that he had a problem with Percocet, and that's the reason why he tested positive for drugs. And I'm not sure how long ago he tested positive for drugs, but he tested positive for drugs. And this judge is using that as a factor to sentence this brother for 2 to 5 years in prison. How does sentencing somebody to 2 to 5 years in prison help them overcome a drug addiction? How does that address that problem? It doesn't address the problem. And the fact of the matter is, nonviolent drug offenses should not be a basis for locking somebody up. That should be treated as a health issue. It should be addressed as a health issue. So you have these nonviolent offenses, and you got this brother going to jail for 2 to 5 years, and that's outrageous. This judge had other alternatives that she could have used. She could have had him sentenced to drug treatment. She could have had him serve community time, you know, do community service in the community. That would be more beneficial to the community than to have this brother locked up for 2 to 5 years away from his family. So he can't be there for his children. He can't be there to provide for his children when he's locked up. How does that benefit anyone? What interest does that serve? It doesn't serve any interest. All it does is exacerbate this problem of mass incarceration in Black communities for nonviolent drug offenses. And when you look at how the drug problem is being addressed in today's society, now that it is affecting these predominantly white communities, you see a different approach. All of a sudden, the politicians are merciful. All of a sudden, they have compassion. All of a sudden, they care about drug addicts. But when it comes to Black people, unfortunately, they don't have that same compassion. Unfortunately, they had a tough on crime type of posture. And we saw that during the crack epidemic in the Black community. We saw that with the sentencing disparities between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. Crack cocaine being a drug used in Black and poor neighborhoods, in poor communities, and cocaine, you know, powder cocaine being a drug that's used in more affluent communities that could afford to purchase that drug. The law treated those two drugs completely different. You know, the sentencing disparity was 100 to 1. And that's just an example of how they deal with Black communities compared to white communities. And when you look at the drug usage, in Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, she pointed out how Black people and white people use drugs at similar rates, but yet and still Black people are targeted by law enforcement. Yet and still Black people receive harsher sentences for committing the same crimes that white people commit. And this is just another example. I mean, you have these people, they are all merciful when it comes to these white people addicted to drugs, but all of a sudden when it comes to Black people, they are harsh. They don't show any mercy. They're strict law and order type of posture when it comes to Black people. And it's a shame that often the ones who will exercise the most tyranny against Black communities, often they are these elite Negroes who have been put into positions of privilege, who have been given these token positions. They don't have any problem playing the role of the overseer on the plantation, doing the bidding of the slave master, man. And that's exactly what this judge has done. She has inflicted and, giving this brother this harsh and ridiculous sentence. It's outrageous. And it's important to note this judge, I pointed out how what she did was unreasonable, how it was unjust. But this judge is also being investigated by the FBI for extortion. They've been monitoring her for quite some time. If that doesn't raise a red flag for you, I don't know what else will. If that doesn't cause you to question whether this judge's judgment, I don't know what else will. This judge is being investigated because this judge had the audacity to ask this brother, Meek Mill, to leave his label and to sign with another label, as if this woman was some kind of music executive. That is inappropriate conduct for a judge. So she wanted the brother Meek Mill, to leave his label to join another label or another management company owned by her boyfriend. And when this brother refused, later he gets this sentence. And there may be a connection between that. It may not just be about these minor violations of his parole. It may be these other issues at play. So not only that, not only did this judge request that this brother leave his label, she also wanted him to shout her out in a song. She also wanted him to use a song by Boyz II Men. This is what this judge actually demanded of this brother. If you think that that is appropriate conduct for a judge, there's something wrong with you. If you think that it is appropriate for this judge to sentence that brother to all those years, 2 to 5 years for these minor nonviolent offenses, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, people want to play holy as if they made no mistakes in their lives. This brother committed the original crime back when he was a teenager. And the system is hanging over his head for the past 10 years. They've extended his probation. His probation was originally like 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And they have extended it to 10 years. And now they're watching over this brother. Any little slip up, if he crosses jaywalks or something, they say that's a violation of his parole. And they want to throw this brother in jail. This is outrageous. And the fact of the matter is, man, if they can do this to somebody that has millions of dollars, somebody that's rich and famous, then we know what happens to the average brother that doesn't have those types of resources. Now, I want to respond to a couple of other things that other points that people made. Like one person said, well, there are more important issues besides Meek Mill. And obviously there are other issues in our community that need to be addressed, other issues in society that need to be addressed. And those types of issues I regularly address on my channel. I address all kinds of substantive issues on this channel. So this is not about me taking away attention from all these other issues to focus on this particular case. But this is something that's very important. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. That I do discuss, obviously, for people who are familiar with my channel, I discuss other important issues as well. But this issue is important because it epitomizes this problem of mass incarceration in Black communities. It is an example. It's not just about him as an individual. It's about this being a case study for what happens all the time in Black communities, where you have Black men and Black women caught up into the criminal justice system, where they have this system hovering over them for years, where they're forced to face potential jail time. They're locked up for these nonviolent offenses. We see the problem of mass incarceration in our communities, where you have massive numbers of young Black men locked up for nonviolent offenses. Again, this brother didn't violate his probation by being some menace to society, by robbing people, shooting people, beating up people, or any of that stuff. This is some minor BS. And this brother shouldn't go to jail. And this epitomizes what happens constantly in Black communities. And that's why this is important. You know, this is not about defending criminals. Like, I hear that all the time, and somebody left a comment saying, why does the Black community defend criminals? Are you doing this why are you defending this criminal? That's what they ask. And the fact of the matter is this: even convicts, you know, people who are ex-offenders, they have civil and human rights as well. Just because somebody has a criminal past, that doesn't mean that society has the right to do whatever they want to that particular individual. This is not about defending a criminal. This is about defending civil and human rights. That's what it's about. It's about a judge who has violated ethics. It's about a judge who was unreasonable in her sentencing of this brother. And it's about how this epitomizes what happens to Black men every day in America. That's why this is important. So it's not about defending criminals. And you hear this a lot. Like, you hear this in these police brutality cases. They say, well, why are you defending a Freddie Gray? You know, somebody that's involved in drugs or somebody that's had a bad criminal history. Why are you defending this brother? That's what they say. But even a Freddie Gray, you know, the fact that he had some criminal past, that doesn't give the police the right to summarily execute that brother. That doesn't give the police the right to put that brother in a paddy wagon, lock him in shackles, and not provide any kind of safety belt or anything like that to ensure that he is safe. It doesn't give the police the right to put that brother in a situation where his neck was shattered to pieces. It doesn't give the police the right to do that. We hear this all the time. What they try to do is dehumanize Black people and demonize Black people so that Black life means absolutely nothing, whether we're talking about Black life being locked away for years or we're talking about Black life being killed. What we're talking about is the issue of freedom right now. That's what we're talking about. So you have other examples, like a Trayvon Martin. The first thing that they tried to do is label him as some criminal. They said, well, he has a history of juvenile delinquency or problems at school and this and that. He took these photographs where he's posing in such and such position. They do that to demonize people. They do that to dehumanize people. And they do that so that they can justify brutality against Black people, whether it's brutality in the terms of sentencing or brutality in the terms of taking a life. Here you had a brother minding his own business, walking where he had every right to be. And you had this wannabe punk-ass cop, George Zimmerman, decide that he looks suspicious, decide that he's going to follow him, decide that he's going to ignore the police. And when this brother tries to defend himself from this creepy stranger, George Zimmerman kills this brother. It took the police forever to press charges against that pig. And when they pressed charges against him and he was brought to trial, the jury let that murderer get away with murder. And the reason why that was allowed to happen is because the public had become desensitized, because they criminalized that brother and dehumanized him. And that's what they're trying to do with this brother, Meek Mill. And it's a damn shame that our own people support this kind of cruelty, that our own people support this kind of harshness, that our own people in these positions of power help implement this system of oppression by trying to send this brother to jail for 2 to 5 years. So I'm going to read through your comments, and I just want to encourage people to sign a petition to raise questions about this judge, man. I'll post a link in the description box after this video is uploaded. So I'm going to take time to read through some of your comments, and then I'm going to get to the second half of this live stream, and that's dealing with this poster of Nicki Minaj on this magazine. I just want to talk about the social implications of this. So let's go through these comments. Okay, so Grandmaster Jay said he should have stayed out of trouble. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that he shouldn't have, as a teenager, he shouldn't have sold drugs or had drugs or had a gun and all that kind of stuff. That's obvious. He should have abided by his probation. He should have obviously not violated his probation, obviously stayed clean of drugs, and obviously sought court permission before traveling to do concerts and all that kind of stuff. That's obvious. He should have done those things. But the question is whether or not this sentence is just, whether or not it is just for this brother to spend 2 to 5 years in prison around hardened criminals. How does that rehabilitate anybody? Spending 2 to 5 years around hardened criminals who are there for actual real crimes, like murder and rape and all that other stuff. That's the question. So I'm going to go through a couple of these other comments. And before I get to one of these comments, I just want to say this. You had this brother who committed these minor infractions being sentenced to 2 to 5 years. You have people who are white who commit much worse crimes who face less time. Like you had this guy who claimed that he suffered from affluenza. This guy was drunk and he crashed and killed several people. He originally didn't have to serve a day in jail. And when I get a chance, I'll post a link in the card so that you can watch my video where I talk about that. You have someone who raped a woman and didn't face this much time in jail. A white man who did that. I'll post a link in the cards about that story. You have crimes committed by white people that are far worse than these minor, trivial infractions, receiving far less time than this brother. And that's fundamentally wrong. That is fundamentally unjust. And it makes it even worse that you have a black judge impose this kind of ridiculous sentence. I hope that the FBI thoroughly investigates this woman. I hope that the Court of Appeals reverse this ridiculous sentence that has been imposed on this man. You had this rap artist in the prime of his career being locked up for all those years for some minor BS. All right, so let me go through these comments. Yeah, so Elaine Lloyd makes a good point about men who have gone to jail not being allowed to vote, get a hard time. They also have a hard time finding a job. And people are robbed of their basic rights for minor things like marijuana, and that's a fact. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how they committed a crime way back when they were very young. And to this day, they are still legally discriminated against because of that offense. Legally discriminated against with employment, with housing, with other opportunities that are being denied to them. And that's what Michelle Alexander talks about in her book. She talks about how the criminal justice system has set up a new system of Jim Crow where it is legal to discriminate against people with a criminal history for like minor nonviolent drug offenses. They're barred from receiving certain types of federal aid, whether we're talking about student aid and other things. They're denied job opportunities. And when somebody is in that situation, it makes it difficult for them to be re-entered in society. It makes it difficult for them to make the transition to a productive life. And it perpetuates the situation where people go in and out of jail because they are denied opportunities. And what you have here in this situation is this woman essentially denying this brother of an opportunity to make a better life for himself. I mean, this guy is fortunate, you know, to come from that kind of background to become a famous, wealthy person. That's an accomplishment. And all that's going to be derailed because of some minor violations. And we know that for brothers who don't have these means, it's much worse for them. Now, I'm going to go to some more of these comments. Now, somebody said he got into a fight in an airport. That's what he was charged with. You know, that's one of the things that he was charged with for violating his probation. But the charges were dismissed. The charges were dismissed. So to hold that against him is just wrong. The charges had to have been dismissed for a reason, meaning that that case against him was weak, meaning that it was baseless, meaning that they didn't have enough evidence to present their case, or there was no good reason to proceed with the case against him for that alleged fight in the airport. So to hold that against him is ridiculous and wrong. And it's just fundamentally unjust. All right, so let me go through some more of these comments. And I want to shout out everybody that's tuning in right now. You know, I appreciate your support. And right after I go through these comments, I'm going to go to the next topic for this stream. Shout out to Ancient Melanin. Shout out to Elaine Lloyd. Shout out to DJ 76. Okay. And the sister Elaine Lloyd mentioned that all you have to do is talk about the situation in Tula, Texas. And hopefully I'm butchering that name. But yeah, I remember hearing about that case, you know, where you had these white police officers basically set up and put trumped up charges on a black community for drug violations and violate people's rights and all that kind of stuff. And a civil rights organization called NAACP LDF, you know, the Lawyers Defense Fund, they brought a suit there from what I recall, and they were successful in that suit. So, you know, that's just a prime example of this problem of mass incarceration. It's an example of this so-called war on drugs, which is nothing but a war on black people, as one of Nixon's aides admitted not too long ago. And I'll post a link to that video when I get a chance after this video has uploaded. I'll post a link to that in the card so that you can see that and read the story about that, how that war on drugs is nothing but a war on black people and a war on the hippies at the time and all that stuff. So DJ 76 said she was trying to be an opportunist. Yeah, so only Elisa W mentioned that his parole was extended because he kept violating his probation. And that's my understanding too. It was extended. But, you know, I just think that it shouldn't have been extended for 10 years. I mean, this guy committed these offenses a long time ago when he was a teenager. And now, like, because of those extensions, he has this probation hanging over his head. And he, like, for these minor things, you know, he faces all this jail time. I think that there could have been alternatives, you know, and obviously I think that he should be held accountable for his actions, but there are other ways to hold a brother accountable. There's other ways that are more productive to hold this brother accountable, you know, again, such as community service, you know, and that would be more beneficial. It would be more beneficial for this brother to serve the community by doing service and all that kind of stuff than it would be for him to be locked up. I mean, among young people, a lot of them look up to him as a rap artist. And he could be an influence for good, you know, if he tailored his message in such a way, and if he did community service. So that's my issue, man. My issue is not with him being held accountable. It's with, you know, the means by which they decided to do so. Yeah, and Elaine Lloyd made a good point about how this situation can bring attention to the average black men, you know, average black men who are locked away with excessive sentences. And that's the main reason why I'm talking about it. And that's the main reason why I support this whole movement to free Meek Mill. Now, some people have said, well, this brother is not, you know, people are acting like he's Malcolm X or, you know, some kind of civil rights leader or Nelson Mandela with this whole free Meek Mills thing. And it's not like that, man. It's about fundamental civil rights. You know, it's not like we're holding this guy up in high esteem and saying he's some great person. It's about condemning an injustice that we see in the system, an injustice that exemplifies what happens every day to many of our people. So I'm going to go through these comments. And then Elaine Lloyd mentioned this whole thing about black people being brainwashed, you know, and this whole black on black crime issue, you know, saying that a friend told her that black people, that white people don't commit, you know, as much intergroup violence outside of these mass shootings. And, you know, that whole mass shooting thing, that just reminds me of this, you know, the fact that the media never refers to those mass shootings as white on white crime. I mean, when that guy shot up all those people in Las Vegas, injuring all those people, killing 58 people, not once did you hear any major media outlet refer to that as white on white violence. Not once did you hear that. Not once did you hear them refer to that shooting that happened in Texas, where that guy went into that church and shot all those fellow white people, his fellow white citizens. Not once did you hear any major media outlet refer to that as white on white violence. When you had that Sandy Hook killing, not once did you hear these people refer to that as white on white violence, because they don't view those killers as a collective. They view them as individuals. They don't judge white people as a collective for the actions of individuals within the white community. They don't criminalize the entire white community based on the actions of a few mass killers. But when it comes to black people, they criminalize the entire black community because of the actions of a few. When you look at the numbers, it's a relatively small number of people who will participate in this violence. But yet they want to judge all black people based on that conduct. Yeah, and She Learns Life said that parole and probation are just a way to get people back in jail. And that's right. That's all it is. You know, they held this, you know, it's like a dark, gloomy cloud hanging over somebody's head, you know, waiting for them to make any kind of little slip up and hold that against them. Shout out to Psycho. Let's see. And I'm not going to repeat myself. I see that somebody named Uber Driver asked some questions that I've already answered in my commentary. It's not about liking rap music or any of that stuff. It's about civil rights. It's about human rights. And True Royal Family pointed out how the judge is a black woman and they have a history together and she likes messing over him. And that's probably true. I mean, I know that they have a history, like she's been involved with the case from the beginning, and she's done some suspect things, like some things that will make you question her judgment. Like one thing that Meek Mill's attorney pointed out is that this judge actually went on a site where Meek Mill was supposed to do community service, and she went there to make sure he was doing community service. And this lawyer pointed out how that kind of conduct by a judge is rare, is out of the norm. And it just speaks to how this judge has like personalized this situation instead of approaching it from a rational basis. And then you had this judge like telling him what kind of decisions he should make in his career, as if she's some kind of music mogul and she's a judge. There's something wrong with that picture. And I think that as they investigate, they're going to find more things that are troubling with this judge. Again, I want to encourage people to sign a petition. I will include that in the description box. I'm going to go through these comments, and then I'm going to move on to the next subject for this stream right here. Okay, so I think I'm going to go on to this next subject. Hopefully I can do this. And before I do this, I want y'all to know that I'm about to show some like risque photographs, so if you're sensitive to those types of things, you may not want to watch this part, but I'm going to address this issue with Nicki Minaj. Oh, thanks, Elaine Lloyd. I appreciate your support. Yeah, I think I want to do that. I want to block that guy. Well, let me see what he's saying. Yeah, I'm going to knock him out. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to share this screen. So you've been warned about what to expect. Just bear with me a second. Now, please let me know if you can see this image that I have up. Can you all see this photograph of Nicki Minaj on this paper magazine cover? If somebody can let me know in the comment section, I would appreciate it. The magazine is called Paper. Can y'all see this? If y'all can let me know. Oh, good. Okay, y'all can see it. I'm going to try to make it bigger if I can. Okay. I need to make sure I can see your comments as well. So bear with me a second. All right, so everybody can see it. Let me scroll down so people can see it further. Okay. All right, and I'm going to look at your comments in a second, but I have to stay on this page so that I could, so you all can see the full image. Now, this image right here has been all over social media, like all up and down my Facebook feed. You know, I see the image and I see a lot of people talking about it and people asking questions about it. And I just want to hear from y'all. What do y'all think about this? And I'll get to your comments in a second. But to me, you know, what I think number one is pathetic. It's pathetic that someone would have to stoop so low in order to get attention to their music. That someone would have to objectify themselves in such a despicable way in order to bring attention to their music. It speaks to the narcissism that exists in this society. You know, you have these people talking about women's rights and all that kind of stuff. This type of stuff sets back women by decades. This type of stuff reduces a woman down to being a sexual object. And when you look at it in terms of the issue of Black women and the way this society views Black women as sex objects from the days of slavery, and you're all familiar with the Hottentot Venus, where this African sister was exploited, you know, made to parade around like a sex object. And then after the woman died, they displayed her body so that people could look at it and marvel at it. And that's what this woman is doing. She has reduced herself to an object in order to sell records. This woman has literally sold her soul. And when people criticize this kind of stuff, what people do is say, well, you're slut shaming and this and that. And they try to make you feel ashamed for condemning this kind of debauchery that exists in our society. You know, this is the image of women that our young ladies are being presented with. This is what they're told is the ideal woman to look like and to be like. This kind of trash. This type of trash receives all kinds of attention and praise. But when a sister is dressed in a dignified and respectable manner, they don't receive this kind of attention and praise. Everybody everywhere is talking about this. And I've debated whether or not to even feed into this thing. But I think that it's important to address this subject, man. It's important to address like how we are degrading ourselves and our women, and how our own women participate in their own degradation. You know, there was a time when you just had men in hip hop degrading Black women with their misogynistic rhetoric and stuff like that, their misogynistic lyrics. But today you have women who volunteer to be degraded, degraded, and to be humiliated. They volunteer for this stuff. They think that there's something glamorous about this, something glamorous by presenting this trashy image of women. You know, the foundation of the society is based on the position of the woman. If the woman is in a bad position, promoting this kind of negativity, then society is lost. If this is the image that our sisters have to look up to, man, I just think back to the days of, Lauryn Hill, when you had rap artists that actually had to have skills. When you had rap artists that actually had to have talent in order to get attention. But now you have trash out here. You have people that are fake out here, that don't have much talent at all. They don't even write their own rhymes. All they do is recite rhymes that somebody else gave them. And all they are is an image. And these people are fake. Plastic surgery everywhere. Bionic women, literally. Fake breasts, fake behind, nose jobs, skin lightening. And this is the image that our sisters are taught to look up to. This is the image that our brothers are taught to idolize, to chase after. An unrealistic image, a degrading image. And we wonder why we have people that don't respect the sisters. We wonder why, a lot of our women are emulating this foolishness. You can't build no strong family or strong community based on those types of images. And some people will say, well, white people do the same thing. You see white people, dressing like that and doing things like that and this and that. White people in this society had the luxury to be treated as individuals, whereas a Black woman is not going to be treated as an individual. She's going to be judged as a part of a group. The entire Black community is going to be judged. I mean, just think about the deepness of that programming, man. Where right now they are promoting, you know, a gay type of agenda, you know, that makes this stuff normal. And it's not normal. So let me look through your comments. You know, I don't want to spend too much more time on that. You know, I just saw it and I had to talk about it. You know, it's just a shame that people feel the need to resort to such gimmicks instead of relying on their talent and their skills. There's so many female rap artists that are much better lyrically than this woman, but because she dresses like this and acts like a buffoon and idiot, she receives all this praise and attention. She receives all this radio dominance and all that stuff. And you see these women following in her footsteps, following her example, following her blueprint. You know, people like Cardi B and all that kind of stuff. This speaks to narcissism. And it speaks to the sickness in our society where this stuff is celebrated and people who have the courage to condemn it are condemned as being shaming people for acting like that. So let's go through the comments and then I'm going to close out this live stream. And again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. So people were wondering what magazine that was. It's Paper. I'll probably include a link to an article about it. And somebody asked, who are those other girls? Well, those are actually duplicates of Nicki Minaj. So she's taking different photographs in different positions and combining them to make it appear as if it's 3 different women. Yeah, Psycho pointed that out, that it's all Nicki. Yeah, Psycho says she's selling sex, the oldest business known to man. And, you know, that's true. I mean, we all heard the saying sex sells and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, people are driven by their lower nature. So, you know, they're more inclined to watch something if it's like has some woman half naked acting, you know, in a sexually provocative kind of way. They're more likely to tune into something like that than they are to tune in to some positive news. Like you had this Muslim sister who is a you know, Olympian. She participated in the fencing competition during the Olympics this past year or whatever, and she now has a Barbie doll that's been issued to present a positive image of not only Muslim women but a positive image of Black women. Now, I bet that issue doesn't receive nearly as much attention as that photograph of Nicki Minaj. It's like this society celebrates that debauchery, but then it looks down upon people who want to dress in a modest fashion, in a civilized fashion. So let me continue on through these comments. Yeah, and DJ76 said, this is ridiculous. The image of a female rapper has been tarnished. It's no longer about having good music anymore. It's turned into a competition on who can be the sluttiest. And that's true. That's, you know, true. Like you'll see these like Cardi B and all that kind of stuff, like competing with Nicki Minaj to see who can be the most sleaziest and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it just was a time like when you had like Lauryn Hill and stuff like that, you know, people like Bahamadia and stuff like that actually spitting lyrics and stuff, you know, actually honing their craft and actually being a, you know, a real hip hop artist, you know. But that time is gone now. It's all about imagery. And it's kind of started with Little Kim and Foxy Brown. I think they started that whole era. And it's just escalated with a Nicki Minaj. Like it's really been taken to a whole nother level. And that's a shame, man. You know, it's a shame. The thing that makes it bad is not just the fact that you have artists like that. The thing that makes it bad is that is the dominant image that is presented of Black women in hip hop, whether we're talking about black women as rap artists or black women as dancers in these videos or models in these videos. The black woman has been reduced to a sex object. And sadly, so many of our sisters embrace that role. They love that role. They play that role and they enjoy it. And it's a shame. Yeah, Psycho's right. You know, Little Kim changed the whole game and she birthed that whole new generation. And DJ 76 said everything about that woman is man-made. That's a fact. Because if you look at her older pictures, like before she got famous, she looks completely different. You know, her complexion is darker. You know, her body is completely different. It's obvious that she has breast implants and butt implants, a nose job, and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, she's as fake as they come, man. Now, somebody said, you know, this person by the name of BS Detector says R. Jelly, that's what he calls him, gets excuses for his actions. And it's only the woman's fault. The same for Meek. That's what I'm saying. Now, if people are familiar with my channel, they know that I didn't give any kind of excuses to R. Kelly. I've done multiple videos condemning what he has done, condemning his history of you know, molesting underage girls and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, his despicable conduct with these young women that he's basically holding against their wills and subjecting them to all kinds of physical and psychological abuse. You know, I've condemned that. So I don't give him a pass or anything like that. And I'm not giving Meek Mill a pass either. I'm just saying that the sentence was unjust. I'm saying that the sentence was too harsh. I'm saying that there were other options available. Yeah, and She Learns Life says this. She says, it's not slut shaming. Our society is brainwashed to act immorally. Our teen girls have no role models. And it says, and she said that 1950s version of sexy was more classy, and that's a fact. And yeah, shout out to Cheetah Baby Goddess. Shout out to Ghost Rider. Shout out to everybody that joined this hangout. I'm going to close out this hangout, and then later on, if I have time, I'm going to do another hangout about some political issues. I want to talk about, you know, the whole situation involving the overthrow of Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. And I plan to talk about the situation with Trump and this effort to repeal Obamacare and this tax law that he's trying to pass and its impact on Black communities. So yeah, I'm going to probably do that later on. Hopefully I'll be able to do it tonight. It may have to wait till tomorrow, but I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this hangout. I appreciate your support and your feedback. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you.